You're online.
Yeah. Good evening, namaskar, adab. Warm welcome to what is quite clearly India's only platform which does simulcast digital broadcasting. It's a platform which we have created because we want you, the viewer, to be informed. For the better part of the last 2 decades, you've seen me in TV studios and you've seen how we were always trying to argue, harass, harangue political spokespersons. And I often ask this question to myself that what did we get at the end of the day? Did we really manage to inform the audience? There was valid, widespread, acceptable criticism of the mainstream media. And I think it's time to change that. At a time when we are looking at the after effects of the corona pandemic, on a day when the Prime Minister has announced lockdown 2.0, exactly how is life going to change for all of us is a question which I think is a valid question, and all of us need to look at that question closely. As always, I've got a very special panel. Subhashji needs no introduction, one of the foremost bureaucrats in India, and he's been writing extensively about what needs to be done to once again bring back the economy on its on its hands and its legs. We'll have a special interview in a short while from now, which I've done earlier in the day with Chetan Bhagat, well-known author. And Chetan has his own take on what needs to be done to deal with the emotional aspects of this kind of a lockdown, and what are the kind of steps that need to be taken if the Indian economy should not end up becoming a has-been economy. The blunt question, the fundamental question that we want to look at is this: that big dream of India becoming a $5 trillion economy, is that dream now out of the window? Is it as good as dead? So first up, I want to begin with you, Subhashji, as we wait for other guests as well to join. I want to hear from you, Subhashji, this lockdown 2.0, essential perhaps, maybe because we don't have the right kind of infrastructure, but does it mean that all the budgetary provisions, the budgetary projections which were made by Nirmala Sitharaman during her budget speech a few weeks back, are all those projections now as good as dead, Subhashji?
See, the economy is in for a big shock. The 70% of economy production is at this moment stalled, which will most likely result into a contraction of economy in the year 2020-21. How much it will be is difficult to say at this stage, because when the lockdown will end, and the lockdown will end this staggered manner over a period of time and all. So taking all these things together, it appears to me very clearly that we will have a contraction rather than growth this year, which relates to your question about the $5 trillion economy dream. The $5 trillion economy dream is set in the context of a specific year, that you would achieve $5 trillion economy by 24-25. That dream in terms of 24-25 is out of the window. I don't think India will have a $5 trillion economy by 2025. But $5 trillion economy will certainly achieve, maybe 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, and if we do fast and good enough, maybe 1 year later. That will still be lot dependent upon how we act, how we reform and take various measures. Coming to your comment about the budget, I think the budget is more like a stillborn kind of thing. It is falling apart. The expenditure projections made in the budget are going to become quite irrelevant. There is very large additional expenditure demand, which the government will have to give sooner or later. There is also a very large hole on the revenue side. Almost every kind of revenue, whether it's GST, excise, customs, corporate tax, will suffer. Consequently, the budget will have a much larger deficit than what was projected. And the budget, as you know, had a lot of off-budget items also. So all these together, taking all these things together, in my judgment, the budget 2021 will probably need to be presented again to make it anything relevant. Otherwise, we will carry on with numbers which will have no relevance.
You know, we've actually put this graphic up, Subhashji, and I'm raising this question. Is it time for a new budget? Now look at the numbers which were projected by the government in terms of the expenditure which was being promised, and you can see this on your screens. You know, the number which was promised was 30.42 lakh crores. Now this is on the 1st of February when Nirmala Sitharaman was making her budgetary speech. There you have 30.42 lakh crore was the budget expenditure. I want to know from you, sir, that this expenditure now really needs to be revisited, because where is the revenue going to come from if you have to make this kind of an expenditure?
So this 30.42 lakh crore is a budget expenditure. Then there is about 3 lakh crores off budget. And I estimate at this stage that at least minimum 3 to 4 lakh crores of additional expenditure would have to be incurred to provide relief to the poor people as well as the industrial workers who have been put out of jobs, and a lot of our MSME businesses which are also losing out very heavily. Even if we were not to support the larger businesses which also are suffering quite a lot. So all these things, if you add up, there is a need for about 6 lakh crores of additional expenditure minimum. On the revenue side, there is a shortfall expected of about 4 to 5 lakh crores. So in my judgment, there is additional financing requirement of about 10 lakh crores to make the budget work for what was projected, what was planned, as well as what is now necessary, and considering the shorter revenue receipts. About 10 lakh crores.
About 10 lakh crores. You know, there are a lot of questions which are coming on my Facebook page, Subhashji. And Amit Goyal, who's one of our loyal viewers, is asking this question: that can the government reduce lending rates to start with, as has been done in most developed nations? And he wants to know that how are you going to manage this deficit which clearly exists between your revenue projections and the expenditure? In fact, maybe if I was to put the next graphic, it'll put this question even very closely, that where is the revenue that we were thinking of collecting? Where is that revenue going to come from? And this revenue which has been projected by the government, you know, that's the second slide. It really today appears to be a scenario of complete total wishful thinking, as far as I'm concerned. If that's the reality, there you have it. See, impact on revenue, and we've broken it down in various subsets. So customs and revenue, excise revenue, GST revenue, non-tax revenue, petroleum demand, goods and services business, disinvestment programs. I mean, how in today's market are you going to carry on with any disinvestment program? So how is the government, sir, if there is no GST tax collection coming in, if there is no disinvestment which is happening, then how is the government going to earn money to make the kind of expenditure which they had promised to do so?
So the first, you made a comment about government reducing interest rates. The interest rate is a function of the central bank, not that of the government.
Right.
The central bank, the RBI, has already brought down the repo rates. That has not translated into the borrowing rates and has not translated into lower rates of interest for the consumers for their housing and other loans, because there is a larger demand for the resources. The deficits are growing, whereas the availability of resources is much less. The only way the government can contribute in keeping the interest rates low is that if the government's borrowing demand is actually met by the central bank directly. In that case, that demand is taken away from the market and what market the banks and the non-banks have the resources is then going to be reasonably sufficient for meeting the business and the household demand. So that is how the interest rate government can contribute in keeping it lower. Now on your question about the revenues, the viewer questions about revenue, I addressed it earlier that the tax revenues are going to fall. On disinvestment, also the market conditions, the way it's going, the traditional disinvestment program cannot actually be run.
It
There
can't
is
be.
an alternative way.
But that's an important point that you're making,
Let me just
because
complete this.
sure. I'm with you only. And Mohan Guruswamy is joining in as well. But I just want to, because that's the point that you're making, Subhaji, is a very, very important point. You are basically saying today that it is not possible for the government to carry on with its disinvestment program the way this disinvestment program was envisaged earlier.
That's correct. So there has to be an alternative way. Now, the traditional disinvestment program is selling small quantities of your shares into the market. The prices have fallen very low. The demand for the equities is much smaller. You can't sell in such kind of fire sale at very low levels of equity. A strategic disinvestment is also off the table for the time being. The BPCL and the Concor, which we wanted to sell, now there is the oil economy is totally in the doldrums. The prices have fallen. The demand for an asset like BPCL, which is a very strong asset, is unlikely to be there at this moment. So I think the traditional way of disinvestment will have to be changed. I have suggested in one of my blogs that one good way to do it is that if the government were to transfer its equity stakes in financial and non-financial companies, they are worth about 15 lakh crores today. To a sovereign asset management company, and that company, a stake in that company, let's say about even 10%, is to be sold to the people, then people are likely to subscribe to that and take that stake because that's a strong company. That way, by selling that stake of about 10% in the sovereign asset management company, the government can probably get 1.5 lakh crores of revenue in a year. You can get more as well, depending upon how you structure and market your transaction. But traditional way of disinvestment, to my mind, is off at least for 6 to 9 months, if not for longer.
If not, and it all, of course, depends on how long do we have to stay in this lockdown. Mohan Guruswamy there as well. Let me get in a comment from him too. Mohan, last time when you came on Saturday, you and Jaggi, you were both of the view that Indian economy is not in a position in which you can go in for this lockdown, which is a perennial lockdown. You can't be in that kind of a scenario. But that's exactly what's happened. The Prime Minister says till the 3rd of May. And on a lighter side, the moment this announcement was made, we were told later by sources in the government that 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, the reason why it's still the 3rd of May is because 1st, 2nd, and 3rd are supposedly public holidays. So therefore, this lockdown is supposed to be till the 3rd. But even if they were public holidays, we could have started economic activity. That question will remain. I'm specifically looking at this graphic, the impact on expenditure. The COVID fund, 26th of March, 1.7 lakh crores. The budget cuts which have been already announced, category A, category B, and category C. In this context, do you think that this lockdown 2.0, which has been imposed, do you think this has basically finished the India story in the medium to short term?
I think it's suspended for the medium term at least, because there's going to be a huge contraction in economic activity. You're literally going to lose 2 months of output, which means that much of a hole in the GDP. And you will actually see a contraction in GDP. And it is going to take us many years to recover the losses we subject ourselves with this lockdown. Lockdown could have been done. And then the sheer pain for human beings who are rendered wageless, talking almost about 100 million people who are without daily wages. And that's a lot of money. and people are already beginning to come on the streets. So first job of the government is to put money and put in people's pockets and put food on the tables. Get the iron wall working. If a government can't provide that, then it's failing in its job. The rest of the money can come. You can go in for more deficit financing. You get back some of your reserves sitting in Washington and monetize that. 15-20% of that you can bring back. There are so many. Why the 23 million government employees? Why aren't you announcing a pay cut? Why don't you announce cancellation of LTC? Why don't you roll back last 2 or 3 DA installments? You make more money available because this is a crisis. And Garg was in the finance ministry when he enacted the FRDN. It gives you the power to sequester funds. Now the top 10 corporates alone have over 10 lakh crores sitting in cash in the banks, and they have no place to go. And the little RBI came up with 1 lakh crores as long-term bonds or something, and they are subscribing to corporate bonds. The money is to go to the small man, is going to the corporates. I think you've got to get some sense and order into how this country is running itself. Who do you want to help now? Who is in a crisis? Who are those guys in Bandra? Why do they want to go home? Because there's no food in Bombay, they're hungry. And you talk about social distancing. They live 8, 10 to a room.
So let's hear response. Since Mohan is specifically referring to your tenure in the finance ministry, in the government, when you were in the economic affairs department, do you think when it comes to micromanagement of the economy, the finance sector in a time like this, do you think we simply just did not think this lockdown through? We just did not anticipate the kind of impact it was going to have on the economic activities. The Prime Minister, today made these 7 commitments. Again, I've repeatedly been insisting that maybe the Prime Minister is giving us an emotional response rather than a response which is steeped in pure economic realities. Do you think that's where the fundamental problem is today in India's approach to COVID?
See, the real economy functions in a certain way. The risk of COVID-19 has come, which makes humans vulnerable to the risk of getting this infection. Now, it's humans who work the economy. That is where the approach anyone will take will have to depend upon balancing the concern of the human safety as well as the economic generation. That debate about lives and the livelihood is in that context. My sense is that I think one more factor, this COVID-19 virus is not going to go away anytime soon. This will remain.
It's going to stay.
This risk will remain for quite some time. And that is what we need to factor in to bring a very calibrated, balanced functioning of the economy and containment to the human risk. By lockdown, what we do is that we just separate humans from each other so that anyone who has the infection does not transmit it. If we want to go through this way, we can't have the economy functional. Even whatever is today allowed also has the risk. Essential economy, agriculture, or some transportation. So we will have to take a very balanced judgment. And in my judgment, what I was expecting is that some of these sectors of the economy which are less susceptible to interactions with outsiders, as well as where the social distancing and other measures can take the protection, provide the protection to the workers, should have been opened up. But whatever we have at this moment, so real economy is what is causing problem. Financial is where you referred now, that the financial economy actually it sits on or it works with the real economy. If real economy is in shambles, finances will always be in shambles. That is where what Mohan Goswami was also saying, that if the real economy leads to insolvencies, if real economy leads to wages loss, workers getting affected, you can't, you have to, he referred to that FRDI bill, which was basically to resolve the financial companies. So I think the way we need to deal with is to adopt a very calibrated approach to put back our economy on its feet and make it functional. Utilize the advantages which are there. We are talking today on this platform, which is a digital platform. Digital platform is the platform which can deliver many of the services today which are most vulnerable. Education system. Yeah.
Subhaji, look at, and that's why I've specifically put this graphic in, and I'm glad that that all of us can have this conversation. Look at the demand which exists today. 3 lakh crores MSME enterprises, informal sector, the number of laborers, 10 crores. I mean,
that's
these
correct.
are, these are big numbers that we're looking at, and everything that you're saying, Subhaji, needs to be addressed. But you know what's happening? I just want to play a video. I want to play a video which will explain to all of you exactly how grave the situation is. Look at what is happening in Mumbai. As we speak, I'm told the Home Minister and the Prime Minister both have expressed their deep concern about what's happening in Mumbai. And there are laborers who've all gathered at Bandra station because, well, there is no money in their pockets. If there is no money in their pockets, then what do? That's why this video, which will now play, it'll give you a very clear picture of just how bad the scenario really is. Look at this. Just take a look at this video. This has come via Shivangi Thakur on Twitter. And what this actually tells you, look at the number of people here. We're talking about social distancing. We're talking about what needs to be done. And we're talking about, well, you need to be away from each other. These are the people. Now, if this is happening in the financial capital of this country, if this is happening in the city of Mumbai, if this is happening in Bandra, you can well imagine just how bad the scenario will end up being if this ends up playing out in different parts of the country. So, Mohan, when I look at these pictures, when I look at these videos, and I put it in the context of what's happening, these are migrant workers, these are migrant laborers who are all stuck. How does the government deal with a scenario like this then? You've gone in for lockdown 2.0, but Mohan, how do you help out the people who are now coming out on streets like this?
I'll add one more statistic to you. 37% of Indian families live in one-room tenements. Another 32% live in two-room tenements. They live average 8 to a room, 27 families to a toilet. So what social distancing are you talking about? Are those guys better off in their houses or out on the streets? They're already touching that. So before we do the lockdown, 4 hours of business, we should have prepared for 4 days. And nothing would have, heaven would have not fallen if you didn't announce the lockdown after 4 days. So prepared with flexibility, with
look at this, this is what happens.
And you're talking about 100 million people now who are on the streets. Your entire construction sector is gone, daily wages. Your retail sector, the small retail is gone.
How do you bring them back?
Now it's going to take time to bring them back. You need first to put money into the system, flush the system with cash.
How? Where is the money coming from? That's what I'm saying. I put in all numbers. I put in all graphics.
I gave you the numbers. Why have you got $490 billion sitting in American banks getting nothing? Why have you got 9 lakh crores of Reserve Bank reserves? Why are you paying leave travel benefit and paying government employees for 8 months? Wage cut. And invest the funds in the bank.
हम यूपी बिहार उड़ीसा से आए हुए लोग यहाँ काम करते हैं, कामगार लोग हैं, यहाँ हमें कोई सुविधा नहीं मिल रही है, हम भूखे मर रहे हैं। प्लीज हमें जो है प्रधानमंत्री या मुख्यमंत्री जो भी हैं, हमें कुछ सुविधा दिया जाए, वरना हमें गांव भेजा जाए। या तो हम पैदल यहाँ से निकल जाएंगे, या जो भी होवे, हमें कोई सुविधा नहीं मिल रही है, हम भूखे मर रहे हैं। या तो फिर बोलिए, या तो हम रोड पे बैठेंगे, ना ये कोई न्यूज वाले आ रहे हैं, ना कोई प्रशासन हमें कुछ कर रही है। हम रोड पे निकल रहे हैं कुछ भी करने के लिए, तो हमें प्रशासन लाठी मार रही है। या तो हमें गांव भेज दिया जाए, या तो हमें कोई सुविधा दिया जाए। प्लीज हमें प्रशासन, हमारे जो भी हैं प्रतिनिधि, हमें कोई नहीं मिलने आ रहा है, ना MP, ना MLA, ना या हमें मुख्यमंत्री, ना कोई भी चीज, हमें कोई सेवा नहीं मिल रही है। प्लीज हमारे लिए कुछ किया जाए।
मिलेगा तो लाठी चार्ज पब्लिक का।
See, this is the reality. Now, Mohan, if this is the reality, Mohan, if this is the reality, you know, maybe I just want to bring in Subhaji for a moment on this one. Subhaji, how do you people saying this was Surat? You know, one day it is Surat, one day it is one day it is Mumbai. If these pictures play out everywhere, Subhaji, then what does the government do in a scenario like this then?
So this is scary, and this is the direct consequence of the decision which we have taken of the lockdown. I understand that Bandra situation today arose partly because of the misinformation that the trains are being allowed, and that's why they reached. It could have been avoided if the misinformation, but that doesn't take away from the grimness of the situation. And as we have the heat going up, the summer is coming, it is extremely difficult for the workers. And there are crores of them, minimum 10 crores workers are locked up, are staying. Are staying without work at places where they're confined to smaller places, no facilities practically of that type. So the solution is not that we can improve the living conditions for such workers. It's impossible to my mind to improve the living conditions for 10 crore people in such kind of conditions. The only way is to open up the work which is less risky, the construction, the mining, the manufacturing, agriculture, and take a calculated call that we will try to save lives by social distancing, and also identifying whoever gets the infection and segregate him to treat. We will also protect our elderly and so who are more vulnerable to infection and all. So a very intelligent kind of lockdown, which factors into all these kind of things and comes up with a solution where the economy is functional, large part of the economy is functional, as well as the risk is contained. I think that's the solution of this big mess which we are in.
Okay, another question coming, Subhaji, another question coming, and I want both you and Mohan to answer this question before I move on and show you another video. You know, this question is coming on our Facebook feed, and it's a good question in terms of the money which we are all talking about, which is there in the banks. Mohan is talking about, well, why don't we bring in money which is lying there in American banks? But look at the Indian banking system: 27 public sector banks, 21 private sector banks, 49 foreign banks, 56 regional rural banks. The question is this: that is Indian banking system also now going to come under threat because of this economic lockdown? Suppose I feel that I have X amount of money, you know, in bank accounts. Is that money safe, Subhaji? Straight question.
So you are approaching it from the depositor's point of view. I think the banks are safe. There should not be any doubt about it. The government stays behind the public sector banks. Our private sector banks are quite safe as well. So I don't have any sort of fear of the depositors losing money in the banking system. The question comes from what the banking system is supposed to do. The banking system is supposed to provide credit to the businesses for producing, for taking up the production activities and investments. That is where there is a resource, little bit of crunch. The Reserve Bank is trying to meet that by providing liquidity, cutting down the cash reserve ratios and all. But banks in India, which my observation for last some time is that our banking system, particularly the public sector banking system, is not willing to lend, not willing to provide resources to the businesses. As a result, you saw the credit growth for this year is only about 6%. That also because there is a paper credit lending of about 3 lakh crores in March, whereas there was no real lending. So the resources which the Reserve Bank has provided are also mostly sitting in the reverse repo with the Reserve Bank itself rather than being lent. So the real question on the credit side is whether our economy, whether our banking system can lend. Our non-banking system is in a bit of a problem because they don't get the deposits from people. They have to depend on banks and others. So they can't provide. So I think that is where we need to lead.
Sure. More, I'm coming to you. More, I'm coming to you. One more. I want you to look at this video, and it flows in with what Subhaji is talking about. That banks must lend money, and he's making us feel slightly more secure that our money will be safe. But I want you to look at this video. I'm here in Uttarakhand, and I'm in a place where there are many farmers, who indulge in various farming activities, and I've been speaking to them to find out how money supply for them is being impacted. Now, this is what has happened today. I shot this video just a couple of hours back. There was heavy rain, thunder, there was sleet. Ole pad rahe the, Subhaji, ole pad rahe the.
I see.
Now, what was happening was that this farmer that you're seeing, sir, iska apna matar ka khet hai. So he's growing peas. In the middle of this massive thunderstorm and sleet storm, this poor farmer was only busy trying to think how he was going to protect his crop. So he was going, and he was trying to pull out all the peas which he could get hold of. And when I asked him, I said, you're literally playing with your life, because it could have been dangerous. I mean, I'm talking about real heavy solid hailstorm. And he said, "Saab, ye meri jo itni puzzle lagi hui hai. Aise dekhiye lockdown hai. I don't know how to sell. I'm being forced to sell at 10 rupees a kg. I would have sold it at 40 rupees a kg. Where do I go?" His question was, where does he go? So Mohan, I'm asking you, as I look at these videos, yesterday also, Mohan, I had someone from Video Volunteers who was showing us videos from Pune, where farmers were thinking in terms of throwing their Anjeer seed crop, out in the open for consumption of wild animals. On one hand, people coming out in Bandra, Subhaji saying all our money is safe, all very well, but these are the people who need the government's helping hand, Mohan. How does the government help them?
The only way you can help them is by putting money into their pockets, into their accounts. At this moment, you have a fire in the house, and you don't give the banks money. You put money into their accounts. You say you have 72. I remember Subhash Garg claiming when he was finance secretary, 72% of people have Jan Dhan accounts. So if you have those accounts, put money in the accounts. Why aren't you using it? Why don't you give money against basic identification? You got Aadhaar cards for everybody. You got electoral cards for everybody above 18.
Just look at this, Mohan. Look at the volume of. I mean, this was massive. I was really feeling sorry for the poor farmers today, because this kind of rain, A, you have lockdown, B, you have no economic activity, and C, you have this kind of natural crisis which is really staring at you in your face.
And at this moment, the crisis is not funds in the bank, but funds in the accounts of people. If there's funds in the accounts, the banks will have some funds. At least if I have 5,000 rupees coming, I know it's going to come in the next 3 months. Then there'll be a sense of confidence that mother farmer will have a sense of confidence that there's somebody looking after me.
So, Vaji, where is the money coming from? Again, I ask you the same question.
I've outlined in my column yesterday where you can get 15 lakh crores from.
That's correct. So it's not difficult for the government to raise money, borrow directly from the Reserve Bank if need be, and the government must put in the money into the account. It's all, to some extent, it's doing. It has put 500 rupees. But
500 rupees In the
That
hands
is
of
small.
women.
I agree that is small, but let us be realistic. The people who are being addressed by those schemes, this Garib Kalyan, are non-workers. The people who are more affected are the workers.
Are the workers.
These workers are not getting anything. These workers are completely left high and dry. That is why I think it's very necessary. Only some state governments are trying to put money into the account of the workers, construction, otherwise. So that is one thing which is needed to be done. But believe me, in my judgment, the solution is these are temporary palliatives. We can keep people afloat for some time. But the real solution is to get them back to their work, where they can earn their living. You mentioned about the farmers. You mentioned about the farmers. See the bizarre situation which has got created. There are a lot of people who are not getting the fruits and vegetables and cereals for eating because of the dislocation in the transportation system otherwise. At the same time, there are farmers who are forced to feed these to their animals and otherwise. If you look at the data for the prices in the mandis, everything from wheat down to other cereals is down about 15 to 20%. The farmers are not getting prices for whatever they can take to the market. They are forced to liquidate or waste their products, and the consumers are not getting. All this can be solved only if we have a very calibrated, managed lockdown. You can't expect the food economy or the essential economy also to work without with this kind of lockdown which is there. I think we'll need to deal with both ways, put the economy back on rails, and also provide the financial support for the short time till they suffer.
Let me come back on this logic of this lockdown. This whole terror that people are going to die. Now, the facts are that 8.6% of people who are hospitalized are 70 plus. Another 13.4 of 80 plus get hospitalized. In the overall population cohort, that is 40s, only 0.3%. 0.3%. Now, a lot of people can get colds and coughs and, and not know what and get on with it. It's not,
I mean, this is very relevant.
The people are going to die on the streets.
What Mohan is saying is extremely relevant.
Because, the problem, the advantage of India is that our life expectancy is only 66. And you don't have enough old people. The old people's cohort is only in the upper class and upper middle class are well taken care of. 70 plus are mostly concentrated in the cities in the upper classes.
This is what we need to factor in while designing the lockdown. And opening.
Calibrated lockdown.
This risk.
You could have progressive lockdowns. You could do all kinds of things. You can still have a calibrated lockdown. You can allow public transport, people to take their goods on highways. You can allow goods trains to function. Then you think of passenger trains after 10 days. You do all these things. You just can't say this shutdown is a simple mind at work and a simple solution. The evil is in the banality itself. How can you get such a simple solution for a complex situation? Italy are dying in large numbers because the demography is different. People in New York are dying because the demography is different. Where is our above 65 cohort? How many numbers do you have? These are things to be thought out. You just can't say, I'm giving you 4 hours, shut your bags, close your houses, close your doors, don't come out.
Mohan, that's a whole problem. That's a whole problem, Mohan. But let's leave it there. I hope, Subhaji, that that people who are watching this program and all our viewers have got a very clear picture in terms of what the problems are. Mohanji today has suggested a lot of solutions. I'm hoping that these solutions can be factored in. But Subhaji, how do you like this experience? How do you like this experience of being in
it was good. I think that's the way we will have to interact in future also. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Always a
Thanks.
pleasure speaking to you. Mohan and Swaji, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, coming up now is an interesting exercise that we did. Earlier today, I managed to catch up with Chetan Bhagat, well-known author, and I asked him about the emotional implications of being stuck in a lockdown like this. Chetan Bhagat with the emotional implications and the economic implications. Great pleasure to be welcoming our big newsmaker today, our dear friend Chetan Bhagat. Chetan has been on many of our Viewpoint shows earlier on TV, from a TV studio now to the Zoom studio, virtual studio. Live post-Corona, Chetan. Welcome to Live post-Corona.
Yes, life during Corona, I guess. We post-Corona will happen. We are in Corona. And yeah, it is first time I think I'm doing this like this with you. I've come to your studio, I don't know how many times. I once interviewed you also. I remember that.
I remember that. That was quite a fun experience. That's why, Chetan, I've started off with an exercise. I've chosen to quit TV, and I want to focus on this new age broadcasting tools. It's like a simulcast which we do across all social media platforms. So your conversation with me, gets simultaneously relayed on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Periscope, on Twitter, on Instagram. And a lot of people end up joining these conversations, and I see that the shelf life of these conversations is very high. The impact is far more. I've been getting top-end economists thinking about the economic aspect of this. So let me first begin, Chetan, and let me since you're the author, and authors have this great ability to create realities. In your adult life, Chetan, had you ever been in an experience like the one that we are going through now?
No, I don't think adult life, in my childhood life, no. Although I have come a little bit close, but it was now in retrospect, it seems like much milder. In 2003, we had something called SARS, and its epicenter was Hong Kong. It was another virus like the coronavirus. It is one of the coronaviruses, and it originated from China. And I used to work in a bank in Hong Kong then, and I've kind of and luckily that virus didn't go worldwide like this one has. But in Hong Kong, the impact was very high, like literally similar kind of situation that we have now. In fact, Hong Kong right now has had only, I think, a couple of less than 10 deaths on COVID. But on SARS, they had some 300 plus deaths. So we were living in that environment. And one more thing was that although face masks were everywhere, hand washing, sanitizers everywhere, there was no lockdowns though. In fact, I think at that time we couldn't do them. It was just not practical. In 2003, there were no smartphones. It was still the Nokia phone that used to be there, I remember, and we would get SMS updates and all, but we didn't have case numbers so live, literally like cricket scores we are getting right now. So it was a tough time, but they couldn't do a lockdown, but it was still scary because we would hear Hong Kong is just a city, and if in one city 300, 400 people die, it's a city the size of Ahmedabad maybe in population. So just tough. So that I remember, but this is something else where the whole world is in lockdown almost, like India being in lockdown.
Actually, I've been asking this question to myself. I mean, both of us are professionals in our own way. Now, the reason why I have chosen to move from a TV studio to the Zoom studio and do these kind of activities, because I do believe that life during and post-Corona will be dramatically different from life pre-Corona. Do you agree with that? That the sense of normalcy that we were all used to, the sense of normalcy, being normal, will that change it?
Yeah, I think some changes will happen. Some changes were already happening in a way, like online shopping was increasing and malls were going down, right? Or a lot of online streaming was growing much faster than say movies, or cable television was going down, and streaming services, web series, all this Netflix, Amazon Prime were going. It was already happening. But what this has done is, this has, as a byproduct, acted as a catalyst. And I think those trends will get accelerated. So what would have already maybe happened in 3 or 4 years would happen in 3 or 4 months now. So it will seem suddenly very different. Will it happen more gradually? Like, for example, now so many people are buying on clothes online. And 10 years ago, if someone told you that, oh, you'll buy clothes online, you'll be like, what are you talking about? So I think that 10-year process didn't make it seem as sudden. But this will make it seem sudden, because suddenly you'll find that people realize that a lot of things, the phone they had in their hand is very powerful, and it's you can do a lot of things just with this, and I think it will change. I must say also this, we may come across as that.
Chetan, will it? I've asked this question to a whole range of people. That do you think our life choices will they change once we come out of Corona? Will we continue to be as much consumerist as we may have been?
For a while we won't be, but ultimately I think like what happened with SARS. Okay, I mean SARS during Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a very strong real estate market. It's like Mumbai, it's like New York. Property prices fell 50% during SARS, which was a massive thing for Hong Kong. Like and like even in India, property prices haven't really moved. People are saying they'll fall, but Corona has not caused that much decline. So, people felt, oh, maybe it's no longer about Hong Kong property will never come back and it's never going to be the same again. And that's why people are dumping and just leaving. And then it came back and went higher. So it's once people get the freedoms they are used to, human beings are going to do what they have always been doing.
Chetan, does this kind of a lockdown? I mean, look at India now. Look, we're over 40 days. We're supposed to be getting in this kind of a scenario. I want to understand from you what kind of an impact you think it has on the emotional psyche of an individual when you go through an experience like this.
Like I said, firstly, like one of the things I've realized during this is that I initially resisted it a lot. I'm always traveling. In fact, I keep track of my flights. So last year I took 96 flights. The previous year I took 112 flights. So it's 100 flight on a year average, 2 flights a week. You can say I'm always on. Like airport is part of my life. I miss getting cold towels. I was joking. And maybe I should make them at home. That's not very difficult. So I think initially I really resisted. I do a lot of motivational talks. That is my business. I make money from them. So that revenue is completely gone. I had planned a book launch. That's completely gone. But so for the first few days, I really felt angry. I was in denial. I was not feeling good. But now, like almost effectively been into it for a month only, because I think we kind of had started a little bit before. So a month into it, I've accepted it, and what people call the new normal is starting to kick in. That, this is going to be my schedule, and this is what I'm going to do.
What's the new normal, Chetan? What's the new normal for Chetan Bhagat? That's what I want to know.
So, one of the things that I always used to tell myself, and I think I'm unusual in that way, that I am an author, but people always say कि चेतन आपको लिखने के अलावा सब कुछ करता नजर आएगा. So I think because I've been very lucky to get opportunity to do other things, whether to give talks or sometimes do TV shows, or sometimes counting day of elections and here and this and that. I love doing all that. So I would alternate that between my writing, but now I can only write. So in a way, the God from above has said, you're a writer, your job is to write. So you better write. So I think even though I had just finished a book, and normally I would take a year's gap between books, I would have released this. So I've held the release, and I've just immediately started writing another book, what to do, because there's nothing else to do. So I think that has been a big learning. See, ultimately, Bhupendra, it's about adapting. I think people adapt to situations. This is a very extreme situation, and therefore it requires a very extreme form of adaptation. And I think, first of all, before I get into like how to benefit and what to do, I want to say that this will go away. Okay, this will go away to people who are still freaked out and panicky about coronavirus. I think people are. Yeah. The new cases are down. Globally, like 10 days ago, there were 100,000 new cases. Yesterday, there were 70,000. Net cases are down even more if you count the recoveries. Growth rates are falling. This will go away. It's not going to be a Hollywood style movie where the whole of humanity is going to get eradicated. वो नहीं होने वाला है. It's very hard to make predictions, but in 1 month, it will be almost gone, and people will take 1 month more of maybe some precaution, and in 2 months it will be go Corona go.
So here's my poser, Chetan. Look at America, look at Europe, UK, Italy. The sense I get when I speak to the economic heavyweights is that global money today will start looking at India as a great destination for the simple reason that big countries, the big capital powerhouses, will take a long while to come out of the sheer human cost which has been imposed. I mean, look at New York City, one person dying every 17 minutes. Who would have ever thought about it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this kind of a scenario, in a brutal way, actually presents India with a great opportunity?
I would love to say it does, and I'm as much as a patriot as everybody else. But as a observer, I think if it's one area, India is doing a pretty good job of containing the coronavirus and taking the tough decisions. So I do appreciate that. But I think the one area we are not focusing enough on is the economy. Our economy was already weak beforehand, and to think that suddenly people will see India as a massive opportunity. No, it's not going to happen, because firstly, people will become careful with capital for a while. Secondly, there will be amazing opportunities in the US, because if you are trying to do the recovery story or like bounce back story, you can buy US assets. You can buy US shares that have fallen down. You can buy airlines in the US have fallen 70%. So if you're going to bet on airlines, why wouldn't I buy a Delta today? Then Indigo, which may not even have fallen that much actually. So I think it's not that simple that India is not the only basket of opportunities. India has to compare with what is out there globally. So if India is cheap, the world is also cheap. So I think that is.
What do you think for India then?
I see what India is not doing, and I think and now that I see it, I realize maybe it's not what people in India care about, is to how to fix the economy of this once it goes away, because so many small businesses will go out of business now. They go out of business, they will burn up their cash in just buying groceries. They'll buy and when like, look for example, say florists. Okay, I'm giving a very small example. You have small florists, not the big chains. They have a flower shop. They go to the mandi and buy flowers, and then they sell them. Now everything is gone. Nobody's buying flowers. No, they're not allowed to sell flowers. Flowers have died. Whatever, they got their inventory, and the mandi is also closed. When the whole thing restarts, there'll be a certain working capital requirement. You need to, restart the whole thing. It's not just about, how will the florist eat? Okay, fine. You give him a tiffin to eat. That's great. But how does the florist get his business back? And I think that is not something we've thought through. And we just somehow think that poor people, give them food. And if you give them food, it's enough. But poor people are not like animals, right? They're not like street animals that you just give them food and that's all we need to care about. So their livelihoods are getting eradicated.
Opportunities. You need to give them opportunities. You're talking about mandi.
Opportunity.
Looking at
all those things. How will it happen? Yeah, and even big businesses who are leveraged, now suddenly they are out of cash flow. Now the banks are coming on their door. They want to borrow more money. The banks are scared to give. Airlines, for example, are going to be in a big mess. They are paying all the planes are parked on the ground. They're paying monthly rent on them, leases or whatever. They're paying airport authority and they're getting zero revenue. And in the best of times, airlines don't make money or just about scrape through. And now what will happen to them? How are they going to get restarted? Now, if aviation doesn't start properly, people don't start flying here, their business travel doesn't happen. How is India going to start to come back again? So I think we have not talked about these things. We are going too much into India is going to save herself from Corona. Fine, everyone is. But everyone is also thinking about the economy. I mean, the US, with such a high per capita income, with such a rich country, is obsessed about the economy.
So you think the fact
because they know they will conquer Corona. They will conquer it.
So you think that the fact that, we have a prime minister who's the master of communication, and I've always said that Narendra Modi is the ultimate master of communicating with people, his connect with people, be that aside. But do you get this sense that our response to Corona, is it more embedded in emotion than it is in fact?
Well, India is emotional country, and I think every country is emotional, and I think the response everywhere is emotion, and the overriding emotion here is fear and panic. So if people are in fear and panic of death, that some disease is going to come and kill them, and then you tell them, oh, we need to do something about the economy and this and that, and they'll say, hey, get out, you are lost your plot. You become like that uncle, if your relative is in the hospital and everybody's there and the uncle says, acha, per hospital ka bill kitna hai? So, you'll not be very popular at the moment. But you know what? Someone needs to ask that question. Someone needs to say, are we taking care of that side? Have we already mortgaged our house for this treatment? And that may be a difficult conversation, but it's an important one. And I now see signs that we have control. We will control Corona one way or the other. The PM has the capacity to take these tough decisions. He will keep it in a lockdown for one more month if he needs to. So that will get contained. But then what are we going to do about our bringing the business back? And that's something maybe emotionally everybody doesn't feel right now, but they will later. After Corona is over and then the disease is not a threat, then suddenly they'll say, "Arey sir, yeah."
It is hard. So finally then, Chetan, let me put it this way. I've asked this question to all my guests who come on the show. Is there one thing you think that you will end up changing about yourself, about your life, post this kind of an experience that all of us are going through?
Yeah, I think I think I'll simplify my travel. I will not take 90 flights a year because I'm just getting older and I'm kind of finding new peace in staying put. So I'm going to try to make sure that I pick my events selectively or pick whatever work travel is there more selectively. I think I have a bigger taste for minimalism. I mean, I require, because being at home, you don't consume as much and you don't need that much mental stimulation. And you realize that there is some joy in that. The JOMO, the joy of missing out is real. And I think I'm going to keep, I'm actually afraid because as a writer, once you get going on your books and all, I may love the lockdown a bit too much.
Yeah, that's the other joke. That what will we do once this lockdown is over? Chetan, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time out for us.
Thank you.
Podcast will be simulcast.
No problem.
Media platform.
My pleasure.
And stay well, stay safe.
You.
Stay well, stay safe. Bye. Bye. Bye.